US Rugby Happy Hour Live. Interviews with the biggest names in American rugby.
The New England Free Jacks, Major League Rugby champions. One-on-one to score.
Here are your hosts, Bill Baker and that other guy.
Hello from the cool airs of the new US Rugby Happy Hour Live New York studios. We got a grant for $8 million to build these new studios. No, this is not a green screen. This is not your Zoom background. I'm literally in the woods of Woodstock, New York.
Bill, should I warn you if a bear is going to come up behind you? Should I?
Yeah, they are here. And a deer walked by. I was just setting up. But actually, you would actually enjoy my setup right now, Fitzy. Here it is. This is literally what I'm doing right now. This is our studio. $8 million, $9 million. Anyway, hey, we don't have a lot of time today. We're going to get to our guest pretty quick here. But Fitzy, it was great to see you in D.C. We had a great time despite the results of the match. But there was a lot of positives there that we're going to talk about with our guest here in a second. But again, Good to see you. And over the weekend, you recovered, I'm assuming?
Kind of. Sure, it takes a little bit longer to recover. But yeah, I mean, it's hard to believe we've been doing this for 2 years. And it's the first time we've actually met in person. Good time had by all.
I know. We still like each other. So I guess we're going to keep doing this. All right, let's do it. Let's get on with our guest. We had to get him on because both he and I were rushed at the end of the game, and we just had a chance to say hello. But I also think he was mad at me because I shook Ben Holden's hand first and then shook Will Hooley's hand. So let's ask him about that right now. Hey, Will.
Terrible. You know, it's all about those first impressions, and I don't know what kind of first impression you got, Fitzy. Luckily, I've met Bill before, but yeah, how dare you? No, I'm messing with you. It's good to see you all very much briefly, Bill, at Audi Field, and it was a great event. Put it that way for USA Rugby.
Yeah, and Will, let's get right into it. All right, so. We'll start with the Scotland match, was just this weekend, obviously. Around the stadium, the atmosphere, over 17,000 fans. And let's talk about that first. That was a pretty impressive gig they put on there.
Yeah, I think it was interesting because the whole weekend was not just about the game. It was about World Rugby coming into town and, excuse me, and sort of really selling what 2031, 2033 is going to be about, and being, World Rugby at Capitol Hill, that was pretty cool. And then it was almost like, right, well then let's have a bit of a dress rehearsal, a bit of a mock-up. Here you go, here's an international that's going to be at Audi Field. And I've got to say, when eventually when everyone did get into the stadium, we can talk about that in a minute, but when everyone did get in, it was incredible. I mean, just to have that facility was so sort of on top of the field. Speaking to the guys after the game, they really said that's one of the best atmospheres they've been a part of. Sure, we would have loved to maybe have celebrated a few more things that day and maybe a couple more tries. But still, yeah, really special day. I enjoy those kind of moments that USA Rugby can put on, obviously helped by AEG, helped by various other organizations as well that are involved. So yeah, it for me, it's very much sort of like if we continue to do that going forward, we're only going to get better and bigger come 2031.
Yeah, Will, you mentioned all the events on Capitol Hill, right, to kick off for Rugby World Cup hosting duties here in 31 and 33. And I got to say, DC being in my hometown right now, I thought they put on a pretty good showcase. The fans came out even in a boggy, muggy, humid day, threatening rain and all that stuff. But, we're still a few years away from it. But, I mean, I think DC's probably maybe the tops of the list, particularly if they're going to host a Rugby World Cup match in the city. I mean, what more can you say about DC?
Oh, I mean, it was great. I mean, I thoroughly enjoyed it. My wife came out as well with a couple of friends around there, so we tried to make kind of like a weekend of it. And I mean, what a city! I mean, I always think as a obviously English background, but part American, but it reminds me of London. It reminds me a lot of London. And the only thing I would say is the heat. I mean, the humidity and the heat was very tough. The guys having to train in that in the week, and I actually was part of Major League Rugby Rising that was happening in Fredericksburg, just an hour south. And that was a challenge. So I'm not sure how many July games should be played on on that East Coast like that. But yeah, well, I mean, just I mean, it's everything, isn't it? Well, I mean, I think for the Scottish fans, you could clearly see they came out on their numbers. What a week they must have had, coming to the nation's capital, seeing all the fantastic sights, and then getting to see an international rugby game. And the other thing about that stadium is right in the heart of downtown, pretty much, which is pretty unusual, for these kind of stadiums. I remember playing in DC a few years back against the All Blacks. We played out in FedEx Field, which was great, but it didn't have the feeling of being in DC.
Yeah.
So credit to everyone in DC for putting that event on, and long may it continue.
There's one thing about the match, Will, and I've been to a few. You've obviously been to a bunch. This one had something different, because all the other events between MLR Rising, between, the 31 World Cup, your World Rugby was there, AG was everywhere. I seemed to run into everybody walking around the stadium during the match, because I was going from seat to seat, because I'm one of those people. But running into Blaine Scully, running into Alex Magleby from the Free Jacks, running into everybody that was pretty much involved in the game was great to see. And for you, which is really funny, you three were actually in the stands broadcasting the game. Did anyone throw anything at you?
No, it was actually quite funny that, because we the broadcasting booth sits just below where we were. But World Rugby had decided, or certainly there was a conversation between the coaches, that facility, that suite, that box, whatever you want to call it, would be for the coaches for both Scotland and then also for USA. So they had air conditioning. We made sure that human rights were correct for them. But I mean, it's just interesting because it's a soccer stadium, right? So the manager of a soccer team is on the pitch side. Yeah. So I guess there's not actually that sort of facility. So we sat just above it where the cameras were. It actually was really cool, because what a great bird's eye view, surrounded by the fans. You could feel and hear the atmosphere. It's probably a note actually for anyone listening in that when I do Major League Rugby games, I go to a remote facility. So that's either in Indianapolis or in Austin. So you can commentate on, let's say, a couple of games over the weekend rather than just traveling everywhere. So that really being my first commentating gig. I had done a couple in the UK, but not of this kind of magnitude, actually being there live. So it seemed, I was like a kid at Christmas. I was super excited about it. And you're right, Bill, as well. It was, I went to, this is going to make me sound like I'm a celebrity, because I'm not. But when I went to the restroom, and getting from the restroom, like you're bumping into, various people, and which was great. But yeah, it was a culmination, wasn't it? I mean, USA Rugby Hall of Fame was there as well over that weekend. I mean, huge shout out to Lou Stanfill. Come on to that maybe a bit later, but it was altogether a really great celebration of USA Rugby. And sometimes we can't always say we can have great celebrations of USA Rugby, albeit the result still wasn't there.
Well, you talked about the broadcasting there. Let me ask you, which were you more nervous for, your first test as a player or your first test match as a broadcaster in the stadium?
Well, I mean, definitely a player. There's no doubt about that. I mean, probably I'm fortunate to have done the broadcasting, obviously, through the whole of Major League Rugby. So there's loads of little sort of nuances to broadcasting that people just wouldn't know, whether that's having someone talking to your ear during the show, the producer telling you this or telling you that. It's certainly a skill. I mean, I remember the first few times having it, and I'm very lucky to have worked with some really helpful and good people. And I remember Ben Holden saying, I get on really well with Ben, is it's like, you've got to have the ability to continue your sentence, and not just when you hear someone in your ear go, oh, what? Like, just, because the audience doesn't know that you're getting talked to. So yeah, look, there's those little nuances that I felt comfortable about, and I felt so comfortable doing it with Ben Holden and Mike Petrie. I mean, I hope as a three we did a good job, and a shout out to Ryan Ginty as well, Next Level Rugby, because he was part or did the production for that. So which I know was a big moment for him as well. I thought he did a sterling job overall. So yeah, it was good fun.
So let's talk about the performance on the pitch. Last 2 weeks, Summer Series, Romania, Scotland. Obviously, we know the results. in your opinion here, is this? See, it's gonna be hard for you to actually answer this accurately, I think, because you know a bunch of these guys. You played with a lot of them, like AJ, Greg, whoever else. Are we getting old? You know what I mean by that? I don't, and I just mean I felt like some of the players just were off. Obviously, AJ's kicking game wasn't what he normally has. Are we? Is it to the point where we think Scott's going to start? Okay, let's start getting in some younger guys to the detriment possibly of those players.
It's a fair question. I mean, I briefly caught up with the players right at the end over a beer on that Friday night, and obviously AJ's a good mate of mine, and I think he knew more than anyone that it wasn't a good 2 weeks for him. I know you guys know the quality of that guy, that man, and I would say it's hard for someone like him where he finished his season back in May, and to go from his own personal off-season, pre-season to then just come in. He hasn't been part of a USA rugby camp for a while, and then just to go, there you go. Like, away you go. I'm not saying that was the case, but that's not easy. I can assure you that as a player. I remember coming from when I was playing over in the UK, you just drop into Eagles camp, whether that's from an off-season, again, through AJ's just situation. It's not easy. No, AJ will be the first one to admit it wasn't his finest couple of weeks. I think probably on the whole, it just shows you how the continuity side of things, when you just come straight in from that MLR end of season to then go to Romania with a 3-day turnaround is very hard. And I think it showed in that game, because I wouldn't say actually, when you see a team creating chances and opportunities, then, that excites me. When you see basic errors or just last minute decisions that are just not the right decisions, that screams a kind of, that guy is just a little bit off with that, set piece or that kind of decision near the line or whatever it might be. And that's an excuse, yes, but at the same time, I think that's the reality. And then at the same time as well, like a lot of the guys will fully admit from that Romania game, like some of those errors just weren't good enough. For us as broadcasters, you got to call it out. And I still get on really well. You got to call it out as you see it. And again, it sort of continued into the Scotland game just in terms of their discipline. And I was saying a lot of commentary that there is no way that you are going to beat a tier 1 nation if you're giving away X amount of penalties before half time. The Eagles could have gone into that half time against Scotland 21-13. And that would have been, the whole crowd, and that's, a couple of missed kicks, but the whole crowd would have even got further behind the team. But their discipline or just that complete, just random mistake, between AJ and Luke Carty. I mean, I even said 2 guys on the field who I would never have said was going to make that error just before the end of the half. Just that little bit of lack of communication. And again, that does stem from just not playing with each other. And a team like Scotland plays a lot with each other, very much connected through Glasgow Warriors. And it showed. So I'm kind of going around the houses there, not really answering your question. Do I think the Eagles team is too old? I think, in all honesty, in certain areas, I think Scott will look back at this 2 weeks and think, was there maybe an opportunity that I could have tried a couple of individuals or a couple of pairings? I do believe that. I think let's look at the positives and how good was it, though, to see someone like Conor Moonaghan get his final, get his shot and absolutely nail it. Ethan McVie, I think, is going to be around for a long time. I thought he injected something when he came on. Was unlucky not to get a try in that Scotland game. So, it was but then at the same time for Scott, it was a pretty impossible task these 2 weeks. It's almost like this is the mini preseason for them heading into what the PNC. I think judge this Eagles group at the PNC, I guess maybe is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, I think so.
Well, let's talk about that. Looking ahead, right? You got the Pacific Nations Cup coming up at the end of August. USA grouped with Japan and Canada. They kick off against Canada. Exciting stuff there. I guess, to Bill's question, do you anticipate maybe some different players or different names maybe we haven't seen before introduced either into the training squad or maybe even the match day 23?
I think there's certainly
or do you make changes maybe, or do you make changes, right? I guess.
Yeah, I think there's certainly areas that I think you've got to look at. I think in terms of the potential where we can strengthen. It's hard because, as I say, I think when some people are not naming names, whereby they say, well, they're doing really well, Major League Rugby and whatever, and actually, I have to turn around and say, well, in the position they're not good enough yet to go straight into that top level in those positions. That certainly, particularly sometimes in the back row, I think the back row in particular has been a really difficult position to replace some of those key players that you guys might have known throughout the years, whether that be like a Tony Lambourne, a John Quill, a Cam Dolan, in his prime and stuff like that. Like, you got to realize, I guess, I'm bringing this then to that generation that beat Scotland 6 years ago. Like, there was a lot more experience, and the reality is for Scotland, those players, like, they do have to gain experience. So you have to give them a shot, but it's hard when you try and bring them in when they don't have a lot of experience, and then you're asking yourselves, well, hold on a minute, well, shouldn't this guy be given a go? Shouldn't but it's like, well, how do you blood people in? Giving them one international here and there, yes, they might take their chance like Conor Moonaghan did, but at the same time, that doesn't necessarily sort of say great things about the environment if you're just chopping and changing all the time. But at the same time, you need to try and select your best 23, don't you? So I'm not being very good at answering these questions directly, but at the same time, I guess it's a really pivotal point. I think this year the Eagles have got another, I think it's something like 8 Test matches this year overall, right. and therefore with what's just happened, with the end of the playoffs, which is going to be fantastic, Major League Rugby, things have to happen. Like I expect the Eagles to really get like a good result coming up. Whether that's in the PNC, whether that's knocking off one of the Pacific Islanders, or even really sort of, running off Japan. I don't know, but yeah, people will get. Unfortunately, patience will wear thin. But I go back to what I said before. It's a difficult situation with only a couple of weeks, and a time of year which is not ideal as well for Scott and of course the boys too.
It's. What I'm trying to say here, that there's some listeners or followers out there on social media. We all should avoid social media as much as possible, obviously, but for what we do, we're on it. So, especially after Romania, there were some fans that were just lit into the team kind of deal. And of course, I may have had a drink or two, and I kind of lit into them, kind of, relax. If you knew Scott's message, yep. If you knew Scott's message, it's a crawl right now. We're getting to where he wants this team to be in 7 or 8 years or whatever. And even Scott says, as you know, it takes about 7 or 8 years to create an international level player, especially with Anthony and everything else. So losing to Romania, let's not talk about Scotland for a second, but losing to Romania and having Canada beat Romania. Am I accurate? Like, everyone relax. It's okay. We're going to be fine. I'm not saying we're going to win the World Cup, but I'm saying we'll be fine. Am I accurate with that? Or maybe are the fans accurate also? It's like, should we be embarrassed for now?
No, look, I think, Bill, you were totally right to say what you did. I mean, look, I'm a Scott Lawrence fan. I'll back Scott Lawrence all the way. What he's got set up, what he's got lined up. You and I know that. We know that on this call now. But there is a but in all of this. I've said it before, Americans like winners, and I don't blame them. At the end of the day, we can't sit here and just continue to take losses and say, oh, well, we're building towards something and we're going to be successful. So that's my other side of the fence on this. That Romania game was disappointing simply because you look at that team and you look at how many chances they had, and it's kind of like, wow, did we seriously just lose 22-20? And I think that's probably more on the individuals as a side of the collective errors that were made, which was very disappointing. Let's not hide away from that. And the boys would tell that to your face as well. So there's no one's calling anyone out. No one's blaming anyone for any particular thing. Just as a collective, didn't execute right near the end. But I think you're right. I think people do have to relax a little bit. It's frustrating, yes. But as I say, this back end of this calendar year is going to be huge for the Eagles and for Scott, and for this team. And I don't think there's mounting any pressure on them, but it's certainly let's see some really good performances, but let's see some results in there as well.
Will, last couple of minutes here, I see the MLR logo staring at me in the face. We got to talk about the MLR playoffs that are beginning this weekend. Eastern Conference, Western Conference semifinals, right into it. I'm super excited. I mean, I think all the matchups are going to be pretty good. I mean, if you had to, I know this could be hard, if you had to pick one match that you're most excited about, which one is it for you?
It's going to be great, isn't it? And I actually get on a plane back to the UK to see my brother get married this weekend. So I'm going to not be there for broadcast. I'll definitely be tuning in some way, even if it's the early hours in the morning. But I mean, the reality, and we did it. We just recorded yesterday, Corp Sierra and myself for the rundown, and I mean, yeah, please go and watch it when it comes out, because the reality is like you can genuinely see either side beating either team. So it's such a cliche to say it, but like you really can. Like, I'm really interested to see the Jasons go up against each other. So the Jason Potros versus Jason Robertson. I think, DC just have something. DC just have something on the Free Jacks.
Keep going. Keep going. I like what you're saying.
I know. I'm putting this. I'm staying in between here. I do. I think that's such a, and that's the first game of the weekend on the Saturday, just to kick it all off. I think really where that game comes down to is the set piece for the Free Jacks this year has been very hit and miss, to the point whereby like their line out, if it capitulates like it has done during this, sometimes it has this season, like they're not going to get away with it against DC, because their line out has been fantastic. Their set piece has been strong overall. I know there's been a couple of games now. I remember Miami away, they weren't great. But the reality is like that's such a key facet of the game. And Free Jacks haven't shown the massive amount of confidence that just because the lineup doesn't go well, they're still going to just, blitz from a counter attack and score 5 tries. They haven't also done that too, but their team on paper, Free Jacks should win. But I just think that game has so much, like, it's been so close already between the both of them this year that could really go down to the wire. The other one in the West, I would say, actually, is the Houston-Dallas game, because I think Dallas just have something on the Houston SaberCats. Yeah, the SaberCats have won by 1 point twice. But the thing was just so interesting with Nate Osborne. I spoke to him on our show about a month or so ago. I asked, who do you want, Nate? Come on, all coaches have in mind the team they want. And they said, I want the Houston SaberCats. I want the ability to control our travel, get on the bus when we want to get on the bus, take the 3-hour journey, get our fans there. We know the environment. We know the conditions. I mean, Texas is going to be unbearable this time of year, but they know it. Both teams. I can see those two really standing out. But then I haven't even talked about Seattle versus San Diego. I haven't even talked about Nova Chicago. And yeah, it's going to be really competitive, and I'd be interested to see what's happened in the last 2 weeks. Have guys been rested? Are guys, focused back on? A few guys back from injury? I think certainly some of those teams, there's some question marks. So, yeah, go and watch it. It'll be a fun time.
Well, one nice thing about having you on this show, Will, is that you don't one-up us on guests. We have you. You can't do that. So when Dom Bisak was on, same week was on your show in the rundown.
I did notice that, yeah.
We said, hey, what's going on here, Dom? Come on. What'd they give you? Like a watch or something like that?
Stop. Well, they're obviously, by the way, we didn't even talk about that with the USA. Like, what a massive day it is tomorrow. It's a huge ask. For the under-20s, it's a big ask. I mean, I'm not going to lie. That would be the win of all wins. But still, just great to see. That's also part of Scott's planning with the under-20s being so key. So as much as, like, sometimes there's frustrations with the USA Rugby, like, it is going in the right direction with Scott at the helm. And, when we look at the under-20s, yeah, good luck to them tomorrow, because it's a big game for them.
Yeah, it's going to be a tough one, too, because Scotland scored over a century of points a couple times in this tournament, so it will be a tough match. But like I said, if they keep to the good basics and less mistakes, they have a better chance of winning, instead of giving Scotland 30 or 40 yards every penalty. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Hey, Will, a lot of time with you. We wish you had more time to talk about U20s and others, but we'll get you back on soon, and we'll talk about that as well.
Appreciate it, guys. I've got to run myself down to the airport again. So, and get on another flight. So yeah, take care and enjoy the weekend. I think it'll be a good one.
Yep. All right. Safe travels, buddy.
Thanks,
Cheers
Will.
now.
Cheers.
Bye, guys.
All right. Again, always fun having Will on to talk about all. And I wish we did have more time as far as like U20s stuff go. And I love hearing his insight. I love asking a former player like himself who plays with those guys. It's like, okay, how much can he say? Because, they're friends also. He's not going to say, I think KP he's done. Or whatever, that kind of thing. And in my opinion, Fitzy, I don't know if you saw it in the match, KP is also another player who's been out quite a while. He has like his first minutes in a match in a long time.
Yeah.
And it looked like it. He was slow getting up all the time. He was slow back to the pack. But yeah, I don't know if you saw anything else in that match that stood out to you that Will probably couldn't talk about.
Yeah, no, I think Will's right though, even as a broadcaster. And I know it's hard, right? Because when you're close to it, it could be a little bit different, but you do have to call it out as you see it.
Yeah.
And I think he's right. Yeah. And I think it was all fair. And I think the players even themselves said it. It was fair. Yeah. I don't think that performance is probably those two games the way they wanted to start the July Test series. And I'm not panicking. I hate to even use that word because we do have some time to build, and progress sometimes isn't quite linear, right? It's like here and there and jagged, but like you zoom out and all of a sudden you see like this arrow that goes up. You're like, oh yeah, we have been making progress. So we know what the goal is. So let's just get there. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there's nothing wrong with taking 2 steps back and only 1 step forward at times, because those steps back really, or 1 step back and 2 steps forward, it's okay to back up a second. And because, when you get a new guys or something like that, or even like the 37-year-old, player who came in for a moment, getting his cap, we have some interesting decisions there, but I'm sure it has a lot to do with who's available and all that stuff too. We're Joe Taufete. I don't know if he's done internationally, but he was out, getting ready for the playoffs with Seattle. We're definitely missing players, but we also got to see guys like Gola do well, and Mooneyham into the game. I love having Mooneyham out there, and he played really well. He made a couple of mistakes, rookie mistakes as far as international goes, but otherwise I thought Mooneyham did great, and I thought JP did well also, and we did cover the spread, so there's that.
There you go.
That's a win, right?
There you go. If anyone put money on that game, and there you go.
But yeah, all good. I did, by the way, last note, in the airport on the way back from DC to Boston, most of the coaching staff and a few of the players from Scotland were in my terminal. They're all kind of sitting around the area, all in like gear, like they were getting ready to practice. They were in rugby shorts, socks, like warm-ups, regular shirt warm-ups. It's like, did I travel with I don't know, like number 2s, like khaki, I don't know, like the old days of tours. All right, man. Anything else to share? No one did. Yeah.
We got to change that. So.
Yeah. Well, I hope you enjoy my my new background.
It's the best looking green screen I've ever seen. I still convinced you're in front of a green screen. There's no way you're.
Well, look, okay, you see the light through the trees.
That can be faked.
Yeah. All right, buddy. I think that's good. Let's move on. Let's have a great week, and we'll chat again next week.
Let's go, Old Glory DC.
No.
Tried to slip that in before you shut it down.
Hold on.